staying because I know it is the latest time slot. And I have first a question because I speak somehow international Russian and a little bit better international English. If you prefer, I can try to present in international Russian, but if English is okay, I can continue in this way. Okay, you can ask me questions in both languages. I mean, English or Russian or Bulgarian, of course. Okay, my suggestion is to start because we have not so much time, and I will try to make a little bit more interactive this session. Hopefully, we will see how it will happen. Thanks for introduction, so I can skip this slide about myself. And actually, I present myself like community person who like to present and who like also to organize events. So thanks to organizers for the awesome event here, really. And we will talk a little bit more about good practices related to IoT solutions, some common things that we need to consider, and some real cases, some things that I learned in the more difficult way. So first, how many of you have experience with Internet of Things? Nearly 50%. It is not bad, really. Do you know why Internet of Things is so related with cloud computing? What is the reason now to talk so much on IoT and cloud computing? Any suggestions? This is just one of the things. Actually, we have much easier way to create applications. And it is just one of the things, of course. We can prototype our solutions much easier. In the past, it was quite similar, but the most difficult part was the backend part. I mean, analytics, scalability, and providing of all these non-functional requirements that we consider using cloud solutions, like high availability, disaster recovery, other things. Also, it is very easy to deliver something for a short period of time because you have already done these services in the cloud. So cloud in general empower growing of IoT solutions, and from another side, of course, internet connectivity in general is the second thing that is very important. So it seems that it is easy. But in IoT, we have some things that really we need to consider. Too many services, too many things that we need really to do in the proper way. So, initial idea was to talk about different things from technical part, but not only from the technical part, because I already discussed with some people here that most difficult part is to educate customers to expect realistic things and to expect also solutions to be implemented in the proper way, not with some, how to put it, very, very big expectations. I will explain details. So, probably it is the overview that all of you know. We have some kind of sensors, we have some kind of devices that are used to communicate via internet connectivity to our backend. Different kind of sensors, different kind of devices, smart devices, not so smart devices connected to field gateways, and many other deviations. So, these main parts, in general, have representations from the backend in Azure. And also, we need to use these things in the proper way, as I mentioned. So, if we talk about data, it is one of the main considered things, because your first answer was, well, we can collect a lot of data. Do you think that we need to have all this data in our IoT solution? So, it is not a good scenario. It is doable for many solutions, but it is expensive, and also it is not really business case to have this because of many things. We will talk about this. From one side, we have no need to keep data that we will not use often as operational data. From another side, there are regulations. We have no need to keep data that is sensitive data, and it is not up to our solution. IoT solutions actually are so-named data processors. That means some kind of solutions that process data, and they need to keep only this data that is important for some kind of analysis and reports. All other data should be stored in a separate ways. So, we have technical challenges. First of this is connectivity. Do you think that solutions are really prepared for this? I mean, customers quite often want to have real IoT solutions. From our experience, last few years, they are not very well prepared. Imagine if you have, for example, train that provides a lot of telemetry data and some other data, and this train usually goes in different areas with not so good coverage. It is just one of the things that you can imagine. Most of the systems stay more and more connected, but it is process that is still not ready. So sometimes you need to have IoT solution that is ready for this situation, but you need to have a lot of imports, not in real time, because just not all devices that you need to monitor are prepared for this kind of situation. Messaging, many things related to how we will have communication are not very clear for most of the people, and we will talk about this. Analysis part is very important, and it is probably the main reason in cloud to have a lot of services that are mostly tightly connected to internet, and performance is something that is up to many other factors. So, we have, of course, business case. We have a lot of things related to time, cost, technical challenges that are separate, and securing data that is from both sides, technical and business side. Also, probably, you have this common picture. Is there anybody who didn't see this picture in the past? Probably somehow. Okay. So, usually we have this kind of data flow that is very general for most of solutions in IoT, and in Azure is implemented in a similar way. We need somehow to ingress data. In any cases, we need to have access point. That means we need to have any service to be possible to get data. After that, we can have two type of analysis. One analysis that is mostly related to not very difficult and complex data processing, and very often is real-time data processing, and more complex analysis that are done not in real time. So we have these two different types of processing. We have different kinds of storages, and of course we can consume in different way using web API services, doesn't matter on which protocol, and some already done solutions like Power BI, for example, to present data. But the main case is that everything is changes. So the things that we consider now can be obsolete after 1 year. You attended here for many interesting sessions for some things and technologies that probably will be relevant 1-2 years, but after that nobody knows. So one of the main challenges is how to predict what will be on the market after a few years, because we need to design solutions that are in production after a few years. And these solutions need to be actual after a few years. That means we need to have the proper vision about the trend. What will be in the future? How we will have this kind of technologies after few years. So, about main building blocks, there are some things that are good also to be discussed. Probably you already attended sessions about IoT Hub, correct? And there are many good things, a lot of advantages, and some disadvantages. So, any kind of solution has good and not so good things. I will not do here marketing presentation. I will try to discuss the things in both sides. So, is there anybody who can say what is the main advantage of IoT Hub without Anton Boyko?
Maybe unified access to all sensors.
You mean
simplified? Maybe simplified. It's better.
You mean to have this opportunity to use register device with unique identifiers?
And it simplified a lot this process. So we don't need to develop some custom solution for it.
Yes, that's true. It is something like a box with several other functionalities, including event hub functionalities, and registering of devices and supporting of this unique device register is probably one of the most important, of course. There are other things, but this is probably the main one. Do you think that somewhere in these IoT solutions we will have a case with IoT Hub? About bidirectional communication, there is very important thing. Can you explain a little bit more what you think about this?
IoT Hub can communicate to device and send to them some data.
Yes, but is this some kind of issue? The case is when we need to have a very short response time. Is there anybody who can guess why?
Yeah, I know about it.
Okay. So, there are a lot of things that are up to the data persistence. You already learn a lot about Cosmos DB, about Azure SQL database, about other kind of storages. What do you think? Where will be relevant to store the raw data, data that we collect from different kinds of sensors for a long time. Do you think that we need to use relational database or probably Cosmos DB or anything else? Sometimes Cosmos DB, we had very interesting discussion here with some people about good things and some cases. Cosmos DB is not a cheap storage. This is the first thing that you need to consider. If you need mostly to persist data, in this case, Cosmos DB probably will be a little bit expensive solution. Cosmos DB, regarding to the way how to use it, is somewhere between cheaper storages and relational databases, but it could be comparable in some situation even with Azure SQL database. So if we need to keep a lot of data and we have no need to use it often, probably it will be expensive. But if we keep data in another storage, we need to consider several things. If we have data in blob storage, it will be a little bit difficult to search, to have indexing. It is possible to use some solutions, but in general, you need additional index. If you use table storage, do you think that we will have a case? If we have a
I think in this case we'll have some problems with data update, with deleting information from table storage. It's only.
Table storage is very good in some cases, but table storage is two kinds of table storage. Azure Table Storage and Table API from Cosmos DB. We have two different implementations, and it is good to consider this. If we use Azure Table Storage, we have only one property that can be used for indexing. And of course, if we have partitioning, another one for partitioning, but imagine that you need to collect all data and to have analysis searching in different indexes. What will happen? Probably you can have some workaround, but it will be not a good solution. It could be some solution to have, for example, duplicating data, but you will have problem with data consistency in this case. So this is one of the cases. If you use Cosmos DB, Table API, you are able to support much more things and also to have the same SLA. The difference between storages that you have from the beginning of Azure platform, like table storage, blob storage, against Cosmos DB, is that in Cosmos DB you have different level of service agreement. And that's the reason to say that really in Cosmos DB, if we are using Table API, it is a premium table storage. So the case is difficult. There is no perfect solution. In most of cases, we need to keep data in cheap storage, and if we need to have analysis, to move this data in another storage, and after that, not to move, to copy, and after that to delete. Different data flow can be used, but most often this is the approach, because otherwise the price to support data that is not very often used in expensive storage, because we have some good features in this storage, is probably not so relevant also. So there are a lot of things related to analysis of data. If you have a lot of data, you can use, of course, Hadoop or Edge Insight implementation. You can have many things. This talk is not about the analysis part. This is mostly on the main concept and what is probably good solution also. So let's go back to our communication between connected devices or embedded devices and our backend. It is mostly the main critical part, because backend can be used for different kinds of solutions. I mean that backend services, except a few of them, are not unique for IoT solutions. But when we have communication, we need to think about some things, and especially about the security. So if we go in this direction, I will go a little bit forward because we have not a lot of time. We have different kind of communication. The simplest thing is quite straightforward if we just have telemetry, but sometimes we need to have some information from embedded devices that need to be processed and backend to return some information, like in queries. We have some commands from backend to embedded devices, for example, restart device or something like this. We can have some notifications from the backend that something should be happen. So if we have our embedded devices, the orange one, for example, and we have some kind of other application that need to connect to this, there are different approaches, probably old school approaches, but well known, to try to protect this. We can have some port forwarding, we can have firewall, etc. But in general, we will have point that will accept connection from outside. And also, if we have bidirectional communication, we need somehow to send information in both sides. So, how many solutions of this communication between embedded devices and backend you know from the practice or theory? No, I mean like technical solutions. For example, if we need to have pairing between devices, what we can use, like protocol, like probably socket connection.
HTTP.
Yes, but we need somehow to pair our devices. If we have, for example, just receiving of information from one side to another side, it will be a little bit stateless, correct? Our embedded devices are a little bit weaker because they are not so powerful, and they can more difficult to decrypt information. So usually our case is to protect first these embedded devices, because it is easier to attack these devices in general. So in this case, what will be the solution? Probably we can initiate connection from devices to our backend, correct? In this case, we will have only outbound connection from our devices, and it will be not possible our devices behind the firewall to accept connections from outside, correct? So it is solution that works for embedded part, but again, it is not the perfect solution for the backend, correct? And there are different solutions. It is possible to have gateways from the both sides, but again, you will have some kind of communication through some access point. It is not a perfect solution. And IoT Hub use this kind of design. We have two queues, ingress queues and device queue. And the case is that each part writes in one queue and read from another queue. And it is perfect like solution from the security point of view, but what will be the potential case here? Who from you have experience with industrial automation? I know one person for sure. Somebody else? So, what will be the case here? If we send the whole data to the cloud, process data, and get back data without any specific processing that is on site, we will have latency, because this architecture doesn't allow to have very short response time. It is secure, it is scalable, but this is a case. And this is another reason to have this kind of solutions with edge devices, because edge devices provide this opportunity to have local processing for things that you need to have immediately as result. So, about IoT Hub, I will try to skip details again because of the lack of the time. Technical details about different SDKs and all other things, I suppose will be not any issue for you. There are a few things that probably are good to know, that really IoT Hub supports from one side scaling also, from another side it is very well designed to be part of continuous integration, continuous delivery. I mean that there is also service endpoints that are used from Azure Resource Manager, and it is possible to use it in ARM templates. I suppose that you know what is ARM template, correct? Okay. So, usually when we discuss about Microsoft and IoT solutions, there are some things that probably can be also considered in the proper way. Microsoft propose a lot of services and also propose reference architecture, but usually software vendors need to consider the right solution for specific case. Doesn't matter that we have different reference architectures. In this case, you just will get this advantage that you have something that you can use to start without thinking about first interaction for your solution in general. So any things that are related to how to process data, how to store data, gateway, and other things are already suggested. So, it is quite modern to talk about Azure functions. I think that this guy attracts your time with similar presentation. Very good presentation, thank you for this. And usually, for example, when we have something fancy, we need to consider in which place in specific solution we can put this thing, for example. And of course, there are many details, but usually example that I can give you is if we have some kind of notifications that are related to specific logic and processing, and you need to collect data, you need to process this data, and if there are specific need to send back data based on this logic back to the devices, you can use, for example, Azure functions. You can change different kind of jobs with Azure functions, but again, it depends on your specific solutions. It is not a painkiller for any kind of solution. Is there anybody who can say why, not why, in which case, for example, Azure functions will be not the best solution without Anton Boyk? Yes, if you
Low latency, right?
exactly, yes. In this case, it will happen that it is not possible to use effectively Azure functions, and you will have a very high price, for example, of this service. Also, some other things. Quite often, in systems, stream analytics is used for something that is not its main target, and I frankly recommend you to not do it in this way. Quite often, stream analytics is used more just to store data in different outputs. Please do not do that. It is overkill, and it is something that you can use just to prototype something to see the whole data flow, but in general, it is better to consider something more effective. So, do you know anything about Azure IoT Developer Center? I think that some people from the keynote this morning mentioned something about this. So, yes or not? Well, nobody, except 2 or 3 people who talk about this. Okay. There is a dream to have software as a service, from a long time dream, to have software as a service where you are able to have device and just to connect your device, to get some devices and to connect these devices to some backend somewhere to configure what you need, how, for example, your data to be processed, which kind of information to receive, and to have IoT solution. It is something like IoT solution in the context of the software as a service. So, it is possible to consider this solution that Microsoft offers. It is relative, not so far, and I think that it is really something that in the future doesn't matter if there will be, of course, some developing of this concept because everything is changing, but in the future, this will be the thing that will be the main approach for small companies to use IoT solutions, just to get devices and to connect these devices to some backend. If they have simple devices, to have some kind of field gateway that is applicable for this kind of solutions, and to connect this field gateway with other devices and with the backend. About IoT Suite, did you know anything? Some of you. So, you can check IoT Suite. It is something that is good if you want to start with pre-configured solutions. The case is that sometimes very dynamic are changed some services, and even it is possible samples that are available to be a little bit behind latest changes that are done in some services. So just consider this, but it will be good to see that really it is good example how to start. If you have small solution, you can prototype this solution. It is not something that can be used in production without any changes, but you have several main cases that you can reuse for these solutions. So, what about security? You know that security-like term is something that can be considered in different ways. We can talk about security, about privacy, about reliability, and if we do not talk with the specific technical language, for some people, all these things are more or less also relevant to security. So, about reliability, high availability, we can use everything that is just from the cloud services. With the right architecture, we can have these kind of solutions with supporting all these things. What about personal data? It is something that from few years is considered for most of the solutions. In US, there is regulation from few years, and regulations for most of European countries will be enforced from May next year. So, your solution should be used mostly like data processor. That means you need to process data, but to not collect data that is not needed for the proper work of your solution. Usually, even I will give some details. Regarding to regulations, you need to have specific third-party subject that is controller. This controller is, has a responsibility to manage this information. Our solutions, as IoT solutions, are processors. Data subject is especially personality that has this personal data, and we need somehow to manage the things in this way to be not possible based on this information to recognize in a proper way specific personality, because you can imagine, for example, you can have some information, for example, from the casino or something, and this data is collected, for example. After that, if this data is public, somebody who is totally different in his life could be recognized, for example, like a person who likes gambling. There was a case with another company, quite popular, Google, about personal data and their Google Maps and all things that they took on the streets and personalities. But now we already have regulations based on what is accessible and what is not accessible. So you need to consider that your solutions need to support this, and also probably if you work on existing solutions, you can think that these solutions need to be changed somehow. Most of the changes are not up to adding a specific feature or specific approach. These things are up to design and proper use of these systems. So, if we talk about Azure, as I mentioned, we need to have, and usually it is by design, this kind of support. That means if you have sensitive data that is stored in a specific organization, you need to provide the proper interface that will filter this data, to be not possible to access from our system this data after that. Well, you will say sometimes we need to get data that is related to personal data in the moment, but after that, if we have no need to use this data, we should delete it after this data is sent to specific data controller. So, some things that are based to our practice, good and not so good. For example, few years ago, we try to design some kind of common IoT-based solution that can be used to have vertical solutions in different areas. In this time, there was no IoT suite from Microsoft, and because of less experience, we consider that it will be possible to cover some main cases. In general, it is very difficult. You can have basic solutions for different areas, for different domain areas. For example, smart energy, automotive or something, but it is very, very difficult to have unique base framework or reference solutions. So we decided to design this solution for smart energy because it was more doable, and we had most of the cases that all other systems have. Well, first, of course, demand. Yes, we need to have solutions that are really covering business cases. Securing data, we already discussed about this. Predictive maintenance. Usually in our solutions there are many kinds of analyses, but one of the most important things if we monitor and manage some kind of systems is to have predictive maintenance, because in this case we can keep a lot of money for our customers, because if we know when it is possible to have some kind of accident because our equipment need to be replaced, we can predictive do all these things, and predictive analysis help us to have predictive maintenance. This is the main case, and this is one of the things that sell in the best way these kind of systems. So we try to use different solutions about this. We'll go a little bit forward. And many years ago, it was modern to have, for example, business connectors for Office 365, SharePoint. Now it is totally irrelevant, but we start in this way. After that, we consider that we need to have our own solutions because you have specifics in alarming, prediction, billing, and different kind of UI. About the gateway devices, so named field gateway or devices that are used to communicate between front end and our back end. You know that we have a lot of smart devices, smart meters, gas meters, and other devices that can connect directly to the back end. But there are many devices that are not so smart, or there's just sensors, or also even sometimes in smart devices you can have more secure solution using, for example, field gateway. So usually there are different solutions for such kind of devices, but never consider to use embedded devices that are how to start working with IoT for real production. I mean that boards like, for example, Raspberry Pi are totally irrelevant. Consider to put this kind of board, for example, now is winter. Put this board outside and expect everything to work, adding some devices, just for one day. And I'm sure that if we have some kind of betting about this, I will win, that it will doesn't work. For real production, there are embedded devices with production quality. And it is difference that is good to be considered. Yes, we need to start with something cheaper, but for production, we need to use something different. Of course, there are some cheap motherboards that are for devices that are not in aggressive environment. Regarding to number of your client devices, you can consider what is important for you. If you have small number of more complex devices, like train, for example, or buses or something like this, you are in position to have very smart embedded devices. But we had a client with, I think, something about 60,000 coffee machines. Imagine if you need to suggest solution with boards for $200 for 60,000 coffee machines. The price will be much bigger than the price of the backend. And really, in this kind of solution, we need to consider something cheaper and also probably field gateway. So we have everything, but quite often design of the system is the most important from one side, and from another side, another important is to educate customer what is doable and what they can expect. When we have gateway devices, we need to have modularity. That means we need to have some kind of base platform and to have some models. Usually there are two possible approaches: to have virtualization, that is a little bit more complex but more secure, or just to have some plugins, for example, for cheaper devices, where you can have some kind of framework and you can add plugins. Most often used device till now in industry are usually with some framework written on C or more often on C, and plugins that can be implemented in some language faster, like Python, for example. Of course, you can see different solutions, but it is one of the most popular. Node.js is also very popular last year for embedded devices, but C and Python, like technologies, probably are much more for now used. Well, I added some boards. For example, there are some boards that are really serious, but Raspberry Pi is not the best one, of course. So when we have data in and different services, we need somehow to make everything to work in the cloud. What is the main difference when we consider communication between different devices? Doesn't matter if we have this fashion microservices architecture, or we have some probably monolithic models, but in all cases we will have several services. So is it possible to communicate between services using the same approach like in-house, like on premises? No answers? Is it good or it is not good? Well, consider that we can have Azure solution or any cloud solution that is a little bit more distributed. You will have different sections in the in the data center with probably different instances somehow. Again, it depends. You can have some small issues in communication. Sometimes you can lose data. If you have, for some reasons, communication between different data centers, you will have not only all these things, but also latency. Did you ever heard about so-named eventual consistency? Okay, so if we need to provide a solution for this pattern, probably we need to have some messaging service. So solutions like Service Bus, for example, or Kafka, or something that manages messages is quite good applicable. But from another hand, for IoT solutions, we often have simple communication with many messages. That's the reason to be proposed Event Hub, because Event Hub is a specific case of Service Bus, for example. But in general, of course, we can use different kinds of messaging services. Different storages also. If you consider to keep cheap data, as I mentioned, you have no real reason to use relational database or Cosmos DB. You need to use it for a long amount of data if you really need to process this data, to access it often, to make some kind of analysis. So there are some things that we did. For example, there are several small cities in Netherlands with smart energy management, and also batteries that are part of these solutions. That if there is time, probably I can show also the interface. You can shift the peak hours also of energy consumption, because you have in whole solution not only management of different sources, automated, scheduled, or manual remote management and tracking and analysis, but also you are able to play with battery like additional storage. And in the past there was devices that are similar of like car accumulators, but now Tesla Powerwall and Powerpack changed the game, and they really allow much better and simpler solutions. Something that is probably interesting, management of different networks for charging stations. In particular context, it is for electric cars, but you can see similar things also for gas stations and some other things. So the case is that sooner or later we will have more and more electric cars. The example is from Netherlands, but because we used to work, just to go, mostly for this market, I had a schema that for 2 years, 3 times, is increased the number of electric cars. It was from 2013 to 2015. I think that from 2017, 3 times more is grow the number of these cars. So usually you have this kind of devices. Probably you can see these devices also in some cities. And you have all these solutions, all these prerequisites that you need for IoT solution. You need to have intelligent devices that are possible to be used remotely, and also you need to have predictive maintenance, because the price of energy in most of countries is changing every few minutes because of the demand. And customers can choose to charge their cars cheaper for a long period of time, to charge it faster, to have manual management of the charging process, or to leave the system to provide to make the best solutions. So this is one of the things that really we did, and learn a lot about all these things. Most of the solutions in the past, till Microsoft started to provide services like Event Hub, IoT Hub, Stream Analytics, are based on the custom solutions, custom applications. That means we had applications that are based on worker roles in the past and different kinds of cloud services. Now, solution can be done much faster with the common components. Microsoft targets companies that work on IoT solutions. Microsoft is not trying to be end-to-end provider of IoT solutions, excluding solutions that are software as a service that I already explained. So if you consider that something works not in the proper way, probably the case is not because of the service, probably the case is because it is not used in the proper way. So I will skip a lot of things here about connectivity, about other things. This is the whole design of the solution. And the case to start is that we have too many services. Two things that we need to consider with Microsoft Azure. First, that it offers much more services than other competitors, because Microsoft is trying to propose building blocks that can be used. It is good, but you need to know how works these building blocks. And from another side, the second thing that is very, very specific is to estimate the price of these services during the maintenance and production in the proper way, because quite often there is a huge difference between real price and the things that are considered during the design. So I can summarize, if we talk about Microsoft Azure regarding to other platforms, things in this way. If you have IoT solution with Microsoft Azure, you will have something like Limousine. Convenient, you can start, you have a lot of options. If you have, for example, Amazon, you have something like a truck, because you have several based services. You have, for example, one IoT Hub. They have also similar service with some specific things, and 2-3 more services, but really you have not a lot of building blocks that are specific. If you consider Google Cloud, you have nothing specific. I mean that Google Cloud is something like sport car, where you need to set everything in the right way to have performance, but for specific cases also it is possible to be done. But it is probably the best benefit from the Microsoft side, that you can start easy and you can have ready-to-market solutions for the short period of time, because you have no need to implement most of the functionalities. And if you consider hybrid solutions, in hybrid solutions, definitely Microsoft has the best offering. As I mentioned, I'm not Microsoft employee and it is not a sales pitch, but based on our experience, I can say that really we can consider these kind of solutions and these kind of practices if you need to work on your next IoT solutions. So, thank you very much for the patience. It is last session, but it will be great if you have any questions.
Вопросы можно и по-русски задавать.
Да, я понимаю по-русски.
Вопрос о безопасности вы говорили. Могу
Да-да,
по-английски?
можно и по-русски.
Хорошо. Вы говорили о безопасности. Может, я что-то не уловил, но вы сказали, что мы можем только обрабатывать данные и сразу же их удалять, грубо говоря. Мы не имеем права их хранить, да?
Это правильно, и это на много регионов в мире уже законово все установлено. Я имею в виду в Америке уже так, и в Европе, в Евросоюз это приняли 2 года назад, но закон будет в действии с мая следующий год. Так что такие системы не надо хранить данных, на которых можно иметь доступ люди или организации, которые в реале не собственники этих данных, и у них нет, и, как я могу сказать по-русски, могу попробовать по-английски. Хорошо. This data should be accessed only from organizations that are able to manage data in a secure way. There will be a separation between systems that will process data as IoT solutions and solutions that will be mostly for storing of personal data. Because it is a big case that because of the many IoT solutions, really you have no control on your personality and your personal data. That is the case. You know that big companies know everything about you. If you are going at the office, when there is time to go back, Google Maps suggests you to go in specific time because they collect every few seconds information from you. Actually, applications like Facebook, for example, mobile application, and WhatsApp collect 7 to 13 times per minute data from your device. And if you do something different, also data is collected. And it happens a case because really this information can be used from improper way in the future. For example, you can grow, you can have business, and somebody to see that, for example, 20 years ago you went to a specific place that is probably not good for public person or something like this. For example. So, yes.
I have a question directly from our customer. He said, you told us happy story, but what are downsides of problem of using cloud in IoT? I know that is or disadvantages.
There are two things that could be considered, but again, I say something meanwhile in the presentation. First thing is that you need to have connectivity. If you have no connectivity, your data will be not able to be analyzed in real time or even nearly to real time. That's the first thing. If you have short response time, well, that is the reason both Microsoft and Amazon offer edge devices. So it is something that companies need to propose. Because if you have industrial automation, for example, it is not possible to make everything in the cloud regarding to the customer expectations. We tried to do this years ago. Again, we learn in the difficult way that it is not doable, unfortunately. When you have a lot of data with very high frequency and you need a very short response time, it doesn't work. And that's, there is the role of edge devices, really. And I think Microsoft positioned this in the proper way, because Microsoft offers one of the best, well, in the cloud world, the best hybrid solution. So they are able to propose better and more secure communication also. So you can split the things between edge and between the cloud part. About the security, there is third thing that is also regarding to access to your data. But it is a little bit tricky because most of organizations who consider data security in the cloud probably do not go deep in details. I mean that usually cloud providers offer solutions where they cannot read data from customers, because customers can encrypt data with their own keys. There are different ways about this. They can keep this in Key Vault, for example, service. Theoretically, probably is possible cloud provider which has a lot of power, like computing, to decrypt something, but practically not. They are able also, but they need to have more power in their embedded part or devices that are from the client side. They can crypt devices with own keys and to have all these keys deployed in the cloud. So there are solutions, but it is mostly because of the educating and understanding from the customer side. But in some countries, there are regulations about this. You know, probably in Germany, for example, it is fine to have cloud solutions, but your cloud should be in Germany. And your cloud need to be maintained from Germany company, not from US, from somebody else. But these are the cases that can be considered about the security and the cloud disadvantages.
У кого-то еще есть какие-то вопросы? Нет? Хорошо, спасибо большое. Тогда мы должны выбрать самый интересный вопрос.
There are several, but я думаю, что ваш вопрос был самый интересный.
Спасибо большое.
Ну, спасибо большое за внимание и надеюсь, что этот доклад был полезный для вас.
Спасибо большое. Куда вы собрались? Всем стоять и обратно. Ребят, на самом деле большое спасибо, что пришли сегодня. Я надеюсь, была полезная конференция была, либо... А где? Да, вот так должна быть. Отлично, значит, будет хорошая мотивация сделать такого рода конференцию в следующем году. Что у меня опять с микрофоном? Секунду, можно другой, пожалуйста? Раз. Да, будет мотивация. Есть уже планы, пока не буду шарить. Несколько вещей сделать интересных в следующем году. Большое спасибо еще раз. Чуть позже мы пришлем, наверное, типа опросника чтобы узнать, ну, там, отзывы и так далее. Вы как бы пишите честно, как бы, что понравилось, что не понравилось, что улучшить, чтобы мы с каждым годом все улучшали конфу, какие, может быть, новые форматы ввести, может быть, с какого-нибудь рода, там, я не знаю, раунд-тейблы со специалистами, может быть, докладов, наоборот, было слишком много, надо было сделать больше пауз, либо сделать какой-то, там, сделать его, там, например, на 2 часа и посадить специалистов по разным технологиям, где там посидеть, похоливарить, побрейнштормить и так далее. Поэтому все идеи как бы welcome. Ну и большое спасибо за то, что пришли. Можем считать, что... Нет, еще не можем считать. Тут отец-основатель в шапке что-то хочет сказать.
Я хочу, Саша, вопрос тебе один такой задать.
Да.
Возможно, некоторые планы, которые ты мог бы пошарить уже сейчас, но я не знаю, да? Возможно, планируешь что-то еще сделать подобного рода в следующем году, например, в апреле, ну, скажем, там, числа 21-го.
Ну вот я хотел... План есть. Сейчас утрясаем моменты там.
Ну, просто, как
Короче...
просто скажи людям, чтобы резервировали как минимум дату.
Окей. Какая дата?
21 апреля.
21 апреля будет Global Azure Bootcamp. Мы постараемся сделать все возможное, чтобы опять стать частью этого большой конференции, которая будет проходить в один день по всему миру. Вроде как последние года как бы у нас это получалось сделать. Попробуем еще раз. И поэтому очень важны будут ваши фидбэки по поводу сегодняшней конфы, чтобы Bootcamp сделать еще круче, информативнее, полезнее и так далее. Вот. Но я как бы не коммитался, но как бы мы будем стараться. Вот. Я понял. Значит, сделаем. Окей. Все, всем спасибо.